Welcome to this super amazing Vuejs Pinia course, and this is the only course on the internet where you will find each and everything from very scratch till the real advanced thing in Pinia. So without wasting time, let's first see what is the real goal of this course, what exactly we will going to learn. So first we will start by understanding what is a store, what is a state management thing, and why we need a store in any front-end framework like Vue.js. Then we will see what is actually Pinia and how this is connected to the Vue.js. We will move forward by installing and doing setup for Pinia in a fresh Vue.js application, which is a Vue 3 application. After that, we will learn how to define our first ever Pinia store using the Pinia define store function. After that, we will also going to see how we can get the state which we have defined in the store, the Pinia store, how we can get that, and then we will show on our template. Then we also have another great concept which is called getters in Pinia. So what are getters and why we need it is the next topic in our course. After that, we will see what if we want to change something in our state. Like if we have a is authenticated user, we want to turn it false or true, how we can do that. After learning about the state mutations, we will see what is a storeToRef function and why we need it. It's really amazing and important one. After that, we will go a little powerful thing which is Pinia actions. Don't forget to watch the Pinia actions because this is the real mind-blowing thing. All the logics happen on the actions of the Pinia store. After that, we will also see like how we can have async authentication actions inside the Pinia store. And finally, we will move from state getter actions to a simple composition API inside our store. That means you don't have to learn about state getter and action, only one thing, the composition API. The composition API, if you know, then you can use that composition API inside your component as well as inside of your Pinia store. Really great. So if you like this course, please don't forget to hit thumbs up, and if you are new to this Bitfumes YouTube channel, then go and click on this subscribe button so that you will get the daily update by pressing the bell icon after subscribe. And you can see amazing courses every week I publish. That means the learning happens here at Bitfumes. So hit thumbs up and subscribe to Bitfumes YouTube channel. And now let's start the Pinia course. Welcome to this Pinia course. So Pinia is the state management tool for Vue.js. But let's see what exactly Pinia is. As I told you, Pinia is a state management library for Vue 3 as well as for Vue 2. That means this is the Pinia is compatible with Vue 3 and Vue 2. Really amazing thing. So Pinia is a state management. That means it manages all the state of your application in a store. But question comes, what is state management, or I can say what is a store? Let's first understand this thing. So what is a store? A store like Pinia, you can also have a Vuex or many more. So store is an entity holding the state and business logic that is not bounded to your component tree. Seems like complicated. Let me just simplify this. Basically, it says that whatever the data you have, the function you want to call, you can put that on a store instead of putting inside of the component. Suppose one function you want to use in 3 different components. So instead of creating that function in 3 different places for 3 different components, you can have that function on your store and then just call that function from your store on each of your component. So this is the actual statement. In other words, the store host the global state. As I said, it will handle the state of your application. It's a bit like the component that is always there that everybody can read and write to. So it's not just holding the state, you can change inside the state from this store. Isn't it really amazing? So the 3 basic concept in Pinia store is state, getter and actions. It is exactly similar to the data component and methods in a normal Vue component. So let's understand, when should I use a store? When should I use Pinia? So not all applications need the global statement. As I said, if you have very small application and you don't need a very large amount of data, you are not dealing with large amount of data, then it's okay to have the state, the data, the action, computed property all in your component. So that's why it says that not all application need the store. Any data that can be accessible throughout your application, then you can use store to access it. Basically, it says that if you have any data or function, you want that function to be available in any of your component inside the Vuejs, use the store. For example, if you want to know if user is logged in or not, so you want that information in all of your project, every component. So you can hold that information into your store. Like user information, as I said, as well as the data that need to be preserved throughout the pages, like multi-step form. So you can have this kind of data or information in your store. But avoid using store for local component data, like showing and hiding any element just for that component. It's unnecessary to put the thing which is not reusable inside of the store. You can have that information in the component if that is not usable or that is not required in any other places in your application. So that's not recommended, but you can use a store on this point also. So this is for the why you should use the store. But now, why we need a store? So we have talked about like what is a store, when we should use a store, but why we need the store. So let's talk about this as a application component. So this starts with a basic Vue app component. Then inside you have a navbar, and navbar need the information of authenticated user. So you need that information into the navbar component, obviously. Next, suppose you have a books component. So you need to fetch all the books. Yes, that's how you get the data for the books on books component. But this books component will have 2 child component. One is a book detail component. So for book detail component, you need the book detail, book review, the user who has given the reviews, all you need to pass as a prop from books component to the book detail component, because all the information is really coming in books. Then you need to pass that data through the books detail. Similarly, suppose you have author detail, you need to pass the author information from books component to the author detail component via prop. Now let's have more depth. Suppose book detail component has a child component of book review. Now, book review information is available inside this book details component. You can see it is passed from book. Now we are passing only book review and book user as a prop. Why? Because book review also has a child component of review by user, the user information who is giving the review. So you need to pass the user information, and this is the complex thing. You can see the real data is inside the books, and we need to give user information inside the review by user component. So we have to pass through that book detail component, book review component, and then this data comes here. This means, you know, this user review user data is not necessary or not usable in these two components. The book detail component and book review component doesn't need any information about this review user. It's just there because you need to pass the information. We can use the store to actually eliminate all these passing the props game. How? Let's now move to the next slide. So once again, we have a apps component, but then we also have a Pinia store. Now we have a navbar, and remember, navbar need the authenticated user information. We can get that information from the store. That's great. Now remember, books need to fetch all the books information. So instead of fetching directly from the component, we can fetch that inside the store and give all the books from store to the books component. Then remember, books has two different child component, book detail and author books. Now this time we are only giving book detail information to this component because that information is only required by the book details component. Similarly, author details will come from store, and the real magic comes here. Now see, previously we need to pass all the data to the book review and book detail component, whether they are using it or not, because we need to pass through them. But this time, since we have all the information in our store, we can pass only the information required by the component. So we are just passing the book review data, we are just passing the book detail data, and similar to that, when we need the review by user data, we can only pass that review by user data from our store. Isn't it very clean? And yes, this is the real power of using any store or state management library like Pinia we are having here. Next important thing is you need to understand the comparison from component to the store. As I have already told you that the data in a component will be similar to the state in a store. Similar to the computer property you create inside the component will be similar to the getters in a store. And think about methods of component as the actions in store. So these three terminology you need to understand, and these are nothing, just a modified or fancy name for the other thing which is we call inside the component. So let's get back to the Pinia, and let's once again call what is Pinia. Now we have the information about store, the state management. So I have already told you Pinia is a state management for Vue 3 and Vue 2. In November 2019, Pinia started as an experiment to redesign the Vue store with the composition API. The composition API is a new thing in Vue 3, and with this new way of writing the component, they are trying to create, the Vue team are trying to create the new way of having a store. So Pinia has started. But it doesn't require you to use the composition API. Pinia is very flexible and you can, yes, use the composition API, or you can stick with the old way of optional API, which we call this Vue2 thing. But now let's understand why we need Pinia. Yes, we know that we need a store, but why just Pinia? Why not any other store? Because Pinia has an amazing dev tool support. Remember the Vue dev tool we have? So on that, you can track the timeline, you can track the mutation when something is changes, everything you have on your dev tool. Store appears in a component where they are used. So you don't have to worry about moving and seeing where the store is. Wherever you are using the store, you can directly see the store information inside of the component where you are using. That's the dev tool power with Pinia. The time travel and the debugging, as we know, since we have all the history of the changes, you can check where, when, and how things are changed. Then it is really have amazing hot module replacement. That means you can modify your store without reloading your page and keep any existing state while developing. With Pinia, you can extend it by having a new plugins. That means you can extend the functionality of Pinia as you need. And finally, the proper TypeScript support and auto completion for JX users, that JavaScript users, is a really powerful thing for Pinia. And it also provides you the server side rendering support. Isn't it really mind-blowing? And yes, that's why Pinia is the future. I can say future is here with Pinia. So finally, let's call and see how it is similar or different with Vuex, another state management tool for Vue.js. So Pinia, as we know, started as an exploration of what next with Vuex 5, and team decided to make it a new recommendation instead. So they are trying to create new version of Vuex 5, but then they said that, hey, why don't we create a totally new library, and we call it Pinia. So compared to Vuex, Pinia provides a simpler API with less ceremony, offers composition API style, most importantly has solid TypeScript support with this Pinia. That was not available in Vuex. But good thing which I really like is Pinia doesn't have any mutation system. So in Vuex we had the mutation, but Pinia just exclude that, which is really powerful. So with a Vuex 5, yes, you can say that Vuex 5 and Pinia is almost going to be similar, but with the Vuex 4 and less, the Pinia is really totally different. So if you are wondering that you already have Vuex and how you can use the Pinia, you can use both of the both state management like Vuex and Pinia in a single application without any interference. Yes, it is possible, and since Pinia has support for Vue 2 also, you can install Pinia in your older Vue application also. Enough talking, lots of theory. Let's now start with the coding. So now I have this fresh and new Vue 3 project. So I can just say npm run dev to start my local server for Vue 3, and you can see it's just, as I said, fresh new Vue 3 application. Now I want to install Pinia into this Vue application. For that, we need to go to this website pinia.vuejs.org. Also, you can visit vuejs.org, and then on the ecosystem you will find this Pinia as the official library. Okay, so let's close this one. On the Pinia, we need to go to the get started, and then we need to once again click on the get started, and here it's given you need to install this Pinia via npm or via yarn. We are going to use the npm, so copy this, and then let's go here, open a new integrated terminal for VS Code, paste it and hit enter. Now, one thing is you need to remember, this project I have created without Pinia. This means, suppose you want to create a new application. So let me open the terminal and I say npx npm what's that? Yeah. So suppose you are doing this kind of thing to create a new Vue project, then you will see that it's going to ask you that add Pinia for state management. If you are familiar with the Pinia, then yes, when you create new Vue 3 application, then you can say yes. But I said it no because I want to show you how you can actually install or set up the Pinia store. Okay, so Pinia is installed. We can check on package.json and yes, it is here. What next? It says that you need to go where you are creating your Vue application, then import the Pinia from Pinia, like create Pinia from Pinia, then create the Pinia, and then you need to say app.use Pinia, and that's it. Okay, let's go. Here we need to go to the source. Then inside the source we have this app.vue, and also we have this main.js. So let's open this main.js. Inside this you can see we have this create app, and here it's using app.router. Similar to this app.router, we need to say app.use of Pinia, but we don't have the Pinia. Let's create the Pinia. So we say Pinia is coming from create Pinia, and you can see it is the VS Code is giving suggestion. So if I hit enter, as soon as I hit enter, it has also imported that. So we need to call this because it's a function and save this file, and that's it. Our Pinia is now connected to our Vue 3 application. That's so easy. If you are using Vue 2, then you need to use something like Pinia Vue plugin. Use that and then create the Pinia and add the Pinia on your Vue instance. So this is just a simple variation. Now, how do we check that we have the store? So we need to first go on defining a store. How do we define a store? To define a store, we first need to import this function, which is a define store, from Pinia, and then export the define store function with the name and whatever you want to have on the store, and just export it with a proper name you want to give. But these things you need to do where? You need to do all these things in a dedicated file called store. But where we are going to create these files? For that, you can go inside this source directory. Here you can create another directory called stores with a plural, because you may create many stores. Inside this stores, we are going to create a new file called counter.js, a normal JavaScript file. If you are using TypeScript, you can use TS. Now, as we know from the documentation, we first need to import from Pinia. So what we have to import? Importing the define store. Now we have the defined store. So let's create a constant called use counter store. As I said, you can name it very precisely. It could be anything, but general case is like prefixed with use, suffixed with store, and in the middle you can call the name. And then you can say define store and call this function. As a first parameter, you need to provide the name. So I say counter, and we need to export it also. So export const this thing. But as a second parameter, you need to give the definition of your store. But for now, let's keep it simple. What next? It says once you have it, then you can create your store just like that, something like that. But here we have using the store. How we can use the store? It's very simple. We just need to import this file because we have exported it, export const, and then call that exported function. Like here we call it store, you can call it anything, and then use it on your component. Isn't it really amazing? Okay, let's try. So first you can see we have this view, we have about view and home view, we have app.view. So what I'm going to do, I am going to remove this hello world message. I'm going to remove all the stylings we have so that we don't messed up with the view styling. So I just have cleared everything. Now you can see there is no styling. And now if I can see, I can remove the logo also. Now we just have two link for the home page and the about page and the router view. If you don't know about this, don't worry, because our focus is to go on home view, and instead of the welcome component we actually need to do nothing, because let's go here and see home page is having all these information. So if I comment this and go, you can see home page is clear. Okay, so I just want to have a very clear thing. I don't want any clutter. I just say home page. That's it. Nothing crazy. Okay, now as we know, we need to use our store. And how we use? First we need to import. So inside this script tag we can say import, and what is the name we have given for the export? Use counter store. Use counter store from where? We need to import this from our stores, and the file name is counter. So we can say at the rate means coming from the source directory. So from the source slash stores slash counter. This is the way we import our store. Then we need to create the instance of our store. So store is equal to use counter store, and that's it. Finally, we need to log and see what we are getting. So now let's go here, open the dev tool for Chrome, and it says cannot destructure property state of options. Is it undefined? So basically it says that, hey, you have created the store, but in this store you don't have any definition for any state or how this store is going to be. So as a second parameter, I will provide empty object. Now let's go and see what's happening. This time, since we have provided empty object, Vue or Pinia is not complaining about anything, but we are getting this proxy kind of thing, which is having some handler with some store, with some target. I don't get that, but at least I know that there is no error using this store. So we have created the store, but what next? Once you create the store, then you need to define some options inside that. What that mean? you can first start by writing a state. And remember, state is just like a data you have on your component. Okay, so how about creating a count just like this we have? So now let's go and go to the counter store we have created. In the second parameter where we have an empty object, we can say state, and this state is going to have an anonymous function which returns an object. You can either do like this, or you can say like returning an object like this. This is exactly same. I'm using arrow function, so I can say these parentheses, and inside that parenthesis I'm providing this empty object, and here I can say count is equal to 0. Now once we have the state as the count 0, then we can easily use this store, and from this store we can fetch the count value. So let's just log, and we say store dot, and directly I can call count, and this is the power of Pinia. And you can see now we have 0 in our console. When I go on the counter, if I make it 10, and then if I reload application, you can see this is now become 10. And remember, I told you that Pinia is powerful with the view dev tool also. I have this view dev tool. I click here, and then you can see we have Pinia root, where we have a state on the counter store with a value of count 10. So we can also check directly on any store by hitting or clicking on the store name and getting all these things. Now I'm going to create another store. So let's say I will create auth.js, and once again we need to first define a store. So I can say export const. This time I call it use auth store, and say define store, and it will automatically import it. Then give the name for this store, which is auth, and as a second parameter in an object I can provide a store which is going to return the information is authenticated, which is initially false. Now remember, we are not using this store anywhere, but let's go reload this application, and you can see since we are not using that store, you can see it's not available. Now let's use this anywhere. So we can use this on app.view, because this is the place which need information for everywhere. So let's import from @stores/auth, and we are going to import use auth store. Create the instance of this store, so I can call it auth store. Yes, you can call it anything. Generally people call it just a store, but I want to make it more clear. Use auth store, call this, and since we have just imported and created an instance of this store, if I now go and see, it has automatically reloaded hot module replacement, and we have 2 of the store from Pinia. So counter and auth, you can just track what information you have, and if I just click on Pinia root, it will give me all of the store we have with all of the state like here. So this is the way you can create or define store, use that store, but how we can use the value of that store in our component. Now we have 2 of our store, the Pinia store. Let's use the value or the state information inside of the counter to show on our template on our component. This time I'm going to create a component called counter. So inside this component directory, I'm going to create a counter.view, and inside this I'm going to first create a template and then create a div and then create a like simply I just want to show the value, so have count value like this. Okay, so maybe I can just hard code it with the p tag is like count value colon is 0, and we need to use this counter function, not a function, counter component in our app, not app, in our home view. So we have this home page. Below that I am saying counter, and I need to import it. Import counter from @components/counter. Let's see if this is working or not. No, it's not working because it's having some issue. So how we are importing? So maybe here I can see. Okay, so it's not importing via @, it's just importing via that. And also we need to call .view. Okay, we can use the @, but we need to call .view also. Anyways, so homepage count value is 0. Now we know we have the store and we have the information of count value inside the store. So what we will do actually, we will move this store information from here to our counter component. But let's first once again see how we can use this value in our template here. So I can just say store.count. Remember, if you are using this script tag with a setup tag, then you don't have to export anything. Whatever variable or constant you define here will be available in your template. So here we have store.count. Now you can see we have home page and value is 10. But we want this information, the value of count, in our counter component. Let's create a script. Inside this script, I need a prop so that I can easily pass count, and the count value will be store.count, something like this. But then you will find that it's not accepting any prop. That's why if I try to show the count as count like this, then Vue is complaining. Property count was not accessible during rendering. So we need to define inside component that, hey, this is going to accept a prop. So I say props, and then if I log the props, you will find that we have the proxy, but props dot count, is this going to work? No, because first I need to say, hey, props are, and the value of props is count, comma, it's an array like this. Then you will find that 10 is here. Okay, so we are passing. And now if you want to use the script with a setup tag, then you don't need to export it like this. You don't have to do anything. Then instead of doing like this, you have to say, I can just do with for you by just commenting this and creating another script tag with a setup, and now I need to say define props will come here, and the prop value is count, and I say const props is equal to props dot count. That will be available, but we can also say const count is equal to props dot count. A lot of things we have, a lot of information we can provide. Hey, something wrong happened, so I need to remove it. Okay, so I think I have to remove it. Anyways, you can see it's still working, but this is not the good way because we are passing the prop, and passing the prop game is not good when you're using store. So what we have to do, we have to go to the home view, and we are importing or defining the store here inside this component. So I can cut it from here, go to the counter, and then import that store in the counter component directly. And in that case, we don't need to define any prop because we are not passing any prop. And finally, we can simply say store dot count. That's so easy. Now if I reload, still you can see we have the count. Isn't it really cool? And this is the power of Pinia or state management or store, that you don't have to pass any prop if you have the data inside of the store. Now let's understand how we can change this value of the counter. So first we need two buttons. One is for increment, second is for decrement. Here we are on the counter.view component. Above this p tag, I'm going to say increment, and similar to this one is decrement. Okay, so how about this? Looks very bad. So I can just try to remove this p tag so that it will be on a single line. Now instead of increment, I can call it plus, and decrement just call it minus. Yes, this is really nice. Okay, one br tag just for space. Okay, so the value should increase when we click on plus and decrease when we click on minus. Let's implement the plus one. So at the click of this, so when I say at click, I call it increment. Okay, now we need to create a function or a method actually on our script tag. So let's create a method called increment, and inside this I need to increment the value of counter. So can we do like this? Store.count plus plus. Is it going to work? And since we are using a setup method, we don't have to export this increment function. Whatever you define here will be available in our template. Let's see if this is really incrementing or not. Go, click on plus, and wow, that's so easy. It's really incrementing. If this is incrementing, then we can also work on the decrement part. So click decrement, and similar to this, I should also have one more method for decrement, and it will be store minus minus for the count. So we are at 16th. Now click on here. We are reducing it. Wow, so easy and it's really amazing. We should have an information here which is like counter moved to 2 digit, like 0 and 1. Okay, how do we do that? First, we need to create one information here, and that is actually const count digit length, I can call it, and then we need to count the digits. For that, we just need to say store.count. First we can convert this to string, and then we call it length. Since we have created it like this, what we can do, we can simply show with the br tag once again, counter moved to whatever the value length, digit length, I can say digit length. So if I reload, it should start with, let's say, we have the plus and minus, so we can say minus. And the problem here is, you can see if I can start our counter from 0, and then if I reload, you can see it says digit is 1. That's good. But if I move till 10, then you can see it's not updated. Why is that? Because when we go on our counter, this value is updated, but this store.count was initially calculated and never reacted on any changes on the count value. So what that means, how we can understand and how we can move these information to our store. Here comes the getters. So what are getters? Remember, getters are like computed property. So first, let me show you how we can convert this to a computed property and move to our store. So first we need to say const. Once again, I'm going to comment this count digit length. It's going to be the computed, and in the computed we will say, hey, this will return me this thing. Now what's going to happen if I move 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and then 10, you can see now instantly it moved to 2 digit. That's really cool. So we are using the computed property, but because we are inside the component, let's move this information to our store. Open the counter, and just like we have defined the state, we can say we need the getters, and inside the getter we need a simple object where we define the function. So function name is exactly going to be the name which we want to use. So here we say something like this, and this is going to be an arrow function which is having the store, and we can simply say store.count dot to string dot length. And since we have this on our store, we can directly use it just like we use any state. That means we can just comment it here, and now we can say store.count digit length. Reload. It's 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it becomes 2. Wow. So this means anything you want to do with the state and you want to modify that thing, whenever you have computed related information, you can create a getters on that. And the best part on this getter is, you can see we have the store value. So whatever store, that means state value we have, actually this is state, not the store, so we call it state. So whatever state we have, we can just modify and do anything on our getter, and that's why we call it getter, because we are only getting something. Now we are going to understand how we can actually mutate or change or update the state we have in the store. We already know that if we want to update anything from the store, we can directly do store.count, and we can do count plus plus to increment or minus minus to decrement the values. But we have some more other things. So that's why I have added a user information inside a auth store we have. And now let's see how we can actually update this thing. For this, first I will go on app.view, and here after this I will create a simple button, or maybe just have a button, and I call it let's say log out. Now what's generally going to happen when we click on logout, it should make the user authenticated to false. Okay, so right now what we can do, we can go on our home view, and here we can just say user name is, and that username is coming from the auth store. So we need this auth store, so import from at stores/auth and use auth store, and let's create an instance of auth store here like this, and we say auth store dot user dot name. So if I want to render it, I need to use double curly braces, and yeah, you can see username is Sarthak. But we only want to show this when the user is really logged in. So we can simply use a div. Inside this div, we move it and we say that, hey, if auth store dot is authenticated. Okay, now you can see right now is authenticated is false. So if I say on the auth, it is false. Let's make it true only. And now you will see if I reload, yep, it's there. Now what should going to happen when I click on logout? It should make the is authenticated to false, and that means this should be removed from this DOM. Let's see how this is going to work. So first we need to go on our app.view where we have this log out button. We say at click, we want the logout thing, but we need that information in the auth store, or we can directly update it. So how we can do that? We can just create a function or a method called logout. Here we say auth store dot is authenticated to not of, or I can say simply is authenticated to false. So let's reload and click on logout. You can see it's not there, but this is one way of updating or mutating the data. There is another way of doing it. You can also say that auth store dot $state, and then in an object you can define that, hey, I want to update is authenticated state value. So if I do that, you can see if I click on logout, yes, it is logged out, and the very important thing is only is authenticated state value is changed and the user information is still there. But that's not true. When we want to log out, we also want to clear the user information. So in that case, you can also say user is an empty object. If I once again reload the page, yes, we have the data, click on logout, everything is very nice. Okay, so this is one way. We can also do a whole update of the store by using a patch method. It's a method that means you have to give something like this. In this method, you are providing the new state value, and this is working absolutely similar to the state $state we did. So that means if I click on logout, it has only changed is authenticated value because we are providing that, hey, this one is only changed. But if I say user is empty, and then you can see if I click on logout, seems like something bad happened. Okay, you can see it's only updating is authenticated, not the user data. Okay, so what happened behind the scene? What is happening is it's just doing the changes in the state for is authenticated. What happened about the user? Since user is an object of different field, we need some more way of updating using the patch method. So when you are using patch and you want to update something inside of or level 1 or nested data, then instead of directly having this kind of object, you can simply create a function which is going to have a state here, and then you will say state dot is authenticated is equal to false, and state dot user is empty. In this case, if I reload, click on logout, you can see now it is updating both of them. So which one you have to use or which one is good? In my opinion, patch is more user or developer friendly because you are not just updating things randomly. It's more secure because you need to go over the state and then say that, okay, I want to update the user. But if you have a single state, not a nested thing, then you can directly use $state and provide the value just like we did before. One thing more I want to show to you is that if I go on our home view, you can see we are getting the name by saying authstore.user.name. Can we do something like is authenticated? I'm destructuring and the user. So in this case, we just need to say is authenticated and username is this. If I reload, yeah, it's working. Now click on logout. Seems like state is changed, but we lose the reactivity. We lose the connection of the value of these things from the store. How we can deal with this thing? In that case, whenever you want to destructure something, you need to use another you can say hook call, kind of hook, or a simple word is a function which is called storeToRef. This is the function we have to use. So first what we have to do, we have to say auth store, we have the store, then we pass this store inside this function, and then we do the destructuring. So is authenticated and user. This is the function which is actually keeping the reactivity from store to the destructured value. So we have some issue. Oops, we have to import this, and actually this is refs which should come from obviously Pinia. So from Pinia, and now reload. Yeah, we are here, and now you will see that if I click on logout, yes, the state is changed and our DOM is updated accordingly. That means it's really working fine. Well, that's great. So what if we go on app and we just say this is only going to be this is only going to be visible when we have the authstore.is authenticated. So I can say if is authenticated, and otherwise else we say login, and for login we are doing very simple thing, which is create a function called login, and we are updating our state, and we simply say that, hey, this is going to be the true, and here we provide the value just like we have here, like this. Okay, so we are creating a login. So let's reload this page. We have some issue. Okay, let's see what's happening. Is authenticated of, oops, instead of state I need to say auth store, not the state. and it's working. Okay, so let's click on logout, and it's logout. And now if I click on login, we should get back all the state. Click on login, we get back the state. Wow, that's great. But remember, we are doing this when we have very few state. We just have 2 state, so it's good. But what if you want to reset everything to the initial value? Pinia is giving you amazing thing called reset. So auth store, whatever the store name is, and just do the resetting thing. So it will reset to the default value. So let's try this. Click on logout. Everything is gone. This is false. User is not there. Click on login. We are back with the original data which we have defined on our store like here. Isn't it really crazy? Yeah. Remember, I told you that in Pinia we have 3 important concepts. One is the state, second is the getters, and third is the actions. So let's talk about the actions, why we need it and how we are going to use it. So the first ever thing I can show you here, let's go to the counter first. So counter counter component is here, and in this counter function, again it's a component. So in this counter component, you can see we are doing this increment and decrement inside of this component. We can move these logic also on our, yes, inside this store for the counter store. But the question comes, where we can have all these things? Because what we are doing here is a mutation of the state. We are changing the value of the state we have inside of our store. So the counter store we have, what we can do, we cannot put any function inside the state. Yes, we can put any function inside the getters, but getters can only be used as a state. We cannot call that function. How we can move it? And the answer is the actions. So the third thing we need to create here inside of our store is actions. Actions is an object of multiple methods you can call. So the first method I want to have is this increment. So let's move it here, and it is like this. So we are saying that when we call this increment method or a action, in that case we need to just increment the state value of count by 1. But if we do something like this, it will not going to work because the store is not accessible inside the action. So how we can access this count? We need to just say this dot count plus plus. This is the only thing we need to do. But then question comes, how we can call this increment action on our component? Just like we are using any state, just like we are having a getter, we can simply say store dot increment, and that's it. This is a click event, so it will call this increment function or increment method or increment action. So let's try this. So reload this page and I click. Yes, it is working, and minus is working also, but decrement is here, so we can move this decrement also on our store. So in the actions section, we can simply say decrement is count this dot count minus minus, and for the decrement I need to say store dot decrement. Once we done with that, we can easily see that everything is working absolutely fine. And remember, I told you the dev tool is really amazing for the Pinia. Now let's go on our component. So we can see we have this home component and we have the counter component. In the counter component, we can see we are using this store, which is a reactive store, and then this store is a counter store, and you can see we are having the ID of the counter store we are having here. Okay, so in this we can have a lot of other things, but we can see we have this increment and decrement function. That is the thing which we are calling directly on our component. So I think you got the point why we need the actions and how we can use them. But remember, I can also do the destructuring of all these things we are using here. But we cannot do something like this. This is actually breaking the reactivity. So if I say something like this, count, then increment, then decrement, and then count digit length. If we do this and remove store from every place, is this going to work? Let's try. So click. It's not working here. Although if I go on our counter, you can see even count value is not changing because it will not be able to call the function. So what we have to do, we actually need to have store here, or maybe we can call counter store, and then we can say const all of these things with storeToRefs, which should be having counter store, and this should be coming from our Pinia. Okay, so let's remove this computed also, and that's it. Let's try this, and still it's not working. Something is really wrong here. So you can see decrement and increment is not there. So what happened here? Spelling is absolutely perfect, but we can see we are just having storeToRef. That means we can only do the reference or destructuring for the state, not for the action. So can we remove these actions and we can call these actions like this? Okay, and then we try. Yeah, now it is working. But what about the getters? Yes, getters is also working, but the actions we cannot do. Now I just want to have a system where once I log out, once the user is not there, then this increment and decrement will not going to work. So I just want to prevent the increment and decrement functionality if user is not logged in. So how we can do that? Because the user login information is inside the auth.js, or basically auth store. So we need the auth store information in our counter store. So this basically says that we need to import or use another store inside a store. So it's absolutely simple. It's similar to how you are using a store in a component, just like we do here. So first thing is import auth store, use auth store, and then wherever you want to use it, you can first create the instance of it. So const auth store is equal to like this, and then I say that if auth store dot is authenticated, I can say if it is false, then just return. So basically this is exactly similar to like if it is like there. So if user is authenticated, then increment the count. I just said in different way. If user is not authenticated, then just terminate this function. So I like to have this kind of structure, and yeah, we are doing it. So let's try this. Reload this page. User is currently logged in. We can check on our Pinia store that user is authenticated is true. If I click on log out, you can see it is false. And now if I try to increment, we are unable to do that. Okay, so similar to this, we need to also restrict for the decrement system like this. Okay, that's really cool. So click on logout and you can see nothing is working. If I click on log in, and now I can do these things, but I can see I'm repeating myself. I'm doing the same step again and again. So it would be good if I can create an action which is authenticated and move these two things here, and we can simply say return auth.is authenticated. And now I just say instead of this, I can simply say this dot is authenticated. If it is true, if it is false, then just do return. So in that case, we have the logic of authentication here, and then we don't have to repeat for creating the auth store again and again inside our system. Okay, everything is working absolutely fine, and you can do more thing. You can maybe create getter. That's up to you. Okay, so this is how you do or use the action. Now we do have the counter one, and also we have the auth one. And remember, on our app.view, we have two functions which are for log in and log out, which is basically making changes in the store state. Let's move these two from here to auth store, and we just need the actions. When we want to change any state, then use the action. So I say this dot patch, this dot reset, and for the patch thing we get all these things. I think everything is fine. And now I need to use auth store dot logout, auth store dot login, and that's it. Okay, let's once again try. So counter is working, click on logout. Counter is not working, click on login. Counter is once again working. Absolutely right. Everything is so perfect, and thanks to the Pinia action, which is keeping our logic in a separate place and implementation in a component as a separate place. Really amazing. So here in our application, we are using a fake data, and the authentication and user information all are just fake. But we can do a fake level up, fake level 2, by using a res fake data. And basically what we are doing, we are sending a request to this API, and we get some response. So how do we do that? Basically, when you want to use, you just need to run this file, and you get the data, and you get the user information. If you get the user information successfully, then we can say yes, user is logged in. So initially we want to make it false. Let's go to the application, and here I will make it false and make user object as empty. Now if I reload, you can see I cannot increment, decrement. I don't have any login information. So once I click on login, it should log me in. Basically, when I log in, it should send a request and get the data for the user, and then we will say user is logged in. Okay, so we need to go into our app.view. Here we have this login button. Right now we are just calling this login function from our auth store or action which is resetting the state. But this is not true. We need to actually call an API. So here we will go on the action and we just remove this thing and we say fetching this API, and we want to call it as a response, but to have it we first need to say await. And this is the power of the action. That means in actions, any action, you can make any action async and do the await thing. And this is a really powerful thing because you cannot do these things on the state or on the getters, but yes, action are so powerful. Then we can say user is equal to response.json, and I can simply call it data and const user, or I can simply say this dot user is equal to data.data, or let me just first show you what we are getting, then we will do all sorts of things. So first we are here, and when I click on login, it should send a request to the RESTREC API and give me the user. Click, and you can see it's a promise once again. So here also we need to say await. One more time reload, click on login, and we get the data, and the user information is inside the data object. So we can actually destructure this data like here, and then we will not get the support, we will just get the data like this. And once this is successful, we can assign this data to the user, and also we will say that is authenticated is equal to true because we have the user information. Once we do that, let's click on login. You can see we are here, but now on our user detail we have first name and last name, not the simple name field, and that's why we are not able to see anything. Username is blank. Let's go to our auth, actually on home page. Here we are saying that username is user.name, but instead we can say first name. Okay, so reload, click on login, first name with the underscore of name, and now we get the Janet, but we also need to have the last name. So let's have like last name, so Janet Weaver. But you can see we are repeating, and suppose we want to use the full name many places, we need a getter for this. So let's go to our auth, and here we create getters. Getters will be like full name, and this can be a simple function which we get the state, and we simply say it's going to return state dot user dot first name, and it should return like this with the space and last name, last, last name. Okay, so let's use the full name instead of 2 times using first name and the last name like this, and it should work. Click on login. Oops, we have some issue. So let's check on view dev tool. So it says getter full name is Janet Weaver. This is right, but we are not able to get that because we are destructuring the user. We need to destructure the full name like this, and click on login. So click on login. What happened here? Okay, so something is wrong. It says unknown property full name from auth store. We are having it anyways. If we are not getting it like this, we can simply use the auth store. I don't want to waste time, but you get the point. It should work. There is some mistake, but I don't want to spend time on solving that. So now it should totally work. Click on login. Janet Weaver is here. Okay, but you can see we are doing all the async thing in our state, in our store inside the action. We can also do a delay of 2 seconds here, which will give me a delay, and you can see 1 and 2, and here we have the data. So we can do that with the power of resrec, nothing related to Pinia, but we can do that. And I just want to show you that these actions are actually handling the promise. Very nice thing inside the Pinia, and very amazing thing we are doing with the Pinia. So we have covered majority of concepts in Pinia, but if you are looking for some composition API thing inside of the Pinia store, yes, you can do that. So I can show you a magical thing which you can do in the store. And in that case, you don't have to define state, getter, and action. It's just like the component you are using. So how this is going to work? First thing first, you need to make this as an anonymous function. And then here we have defined a count state. Now, can we do like this? Const count is equal to ref and initialize with 0. Yes, you can do that. If you do this thing, and now remember, getters are actually the computed property. So can we do something like this? Const this is actually computed, and this will return like this thing. And now we don't have the state, so we can simply say count dot toString. So we need to remove the getter. And remember, actions are equivalent to the methods in the component. So we can simply remove these things and call it as a function like here, and that's it. Okay, so we have some amazing thing. And now, since we have all these things, we need to export everything so that our store can be used anywhere. So we have increment, we have decrement, we have is authenticated if you really want, but otherwise it's not useful. Then we have a count, then we have a count digit length. Okay, everything is sorted. Can we now use all these things? Let's try. Reload. We are not logged in. Click on login. Login is working. Okay, can we increment the value? We cannot. It says this dot is authenticated is not a function, because we are using something like this. We don't have to say this dot is authenticated. We can directly call is authenticated function, which we are creating here like this. So let's once again try 1, 2, and boom. Click on count. Whoa, count is working. Decrement is working. Everything is working. Why? Because we are now using a composition API in our store. This is so extremely amazingly easy that I don't have to learn about getters, state, action. Everything seems like I just need to learn about the composition API. I can use these composition API thing on my components plus on my store as well. Isn't it really amazing thing? And now let's move this concept to our auth store also. So once again, let's make it a arrow function, and this time we need the const is authenticated is equal to ref of initial false, and const user is equal to, I'm going to make it reactive because it's going to have an object with an empty object. Now once we have it, we can remove this state. Next we need the full name. So const full name is a computed property which is going to return me, I can directly return actually these two things. And in this case, I just say user dot first name and user dot last name. So remove these two. Now coming to the action, we don't need action because all of these will become a normal function. So like actually this is async function login and everything is fine. Okay, seems like everything is good. Let's just return each and everything we have. So login function we have log out function, we have user, we have is authenticated, and finally we have full name. Okay, everything is fine, and let's try that. Reload, click on login, 1 and 2 and 3, undefined, something is not good. So remember, we are using user and reactive user. So to have the values, we just need to say user.value.first name, user.value.last name. Because if I go here on Pinia, on the auth, user object is empty actually. Click on login. Okay, I got the point. So what's happening here in our login, we are saying this dot user as the data. So we need to say this dot user dot value as the data. Now one last time, click on login, and this time we have the value and all these things comes here. Very nice. You can see everything is working absolutely fine, and we can do the logout. Everything is good, but this time we are using the store with a composition API, and I really like this way because I don't have to learn about the state getter and actions. I just learn composition API everywhere it's going to work. Okay, so seems like we have covered lots of things in Pinia. If you really like this video, just give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Bitfume's YouTube channel. What next you want to learn, you can have that in the comment section. Just suggest anything you want to learn. I will surely create videos on that. And do share with your friends. We will meet on the next video. Till then, goodbye.